If this message reached you just now, I need you to halt your scrolling, because what I am about to communicate to you is going to articulate something that you have perceived occurring within your physical form and your emotions over the past couple of weeks, and for which you lacked terminology. Indeed, the ultimate farewell. Indeed, that is not me being melodramatic for the sake of the heading. That is precisely what this entails. You have been bidding farewell to something, and the astonishing aspect, the detail that will make you feel slightly unhinged when I voice it, is that it was never even your suffering to start with. It belonged to them, their mistake, their agony, and you have been lugging it around inside your physique as though it belonged to you for such an extended duration that you completely forgot it did not belong to you. And right now, during this precise interval, that entity is departing from you. That represents the cleansing, and the cleansing has concluded. It is finished, and the bittersweet component, the element that is going to impact you straight in the chest, is that even though this entity was never beneficial for you, even though it was burdensome and bleak and tiring to haul around, you still cherished it slightly because it possessed a sense of familiarity, and now you are releasing your grip on it. And that act of relinquishing feels akin to forfeiting something you adore, even though what you are actually forfeiting is an injury that was never meant to belong to you in the first instance. Understood? Remain engaged with me here, because I assure you that by the conclusion of this you are going to comprehend precisely what has been transpiring with you. Therefore, here is what I am perceiving, and I want you to genuinely tune into this, rather than merely hearing with your auditory senses. Within the past fortnight, or for some of you it extends back an entire month. Thus, simply adopt whatever time frame applies to you, as you understand your personal narrative far better than I do. Something has been purging outward from your system, and when I employ the term purge, I do not signify a minor emotional episode. I imply a total discharge, as if your entire organism decided independently, without seeking your authorization, that it was finished sustaining this entity. And I keep visualizing this mental picture, all right, of a receptacle, like the silhouette of a body, and housed inside it is this dense, dark, swirling substance resembling petroleum, this heavy, dark fluid, and it has simply rested in there for years, and presently it is dripping outward. You can literally observe the level descending, and that receptacle, which is yours, which has constituted you this entire duration, you have been parading around as a vessel holding an entity that was never yours to hold or to bear. And there is this factor that is going to render this sensible. This dark material did not represent your sorrow. It did not represent your embarrassment. It belonged to them, an individual, a parent, a romantic partner, a companion, someone who was obligated to safeguard you, yet failed to do so. Someone transferred their suffering to you, and you, either because you were youthful, or because you cherished them, or because you lacked better judgment, accepted it. You assimilated it as if it were your occupation. You commenced bearing their culpability as though it were your culpability. You began feeling accountable for matters that never constituted your responsibility, their error, their anguish, and you donned it like a secondary integument for years. And now, during these past couple of weeks, that integument is finally shedding. I want you to reflect on whether you experienced any legacy elements resurfacing lately, such as recollections you swore you had already mended, legacy routines you believed you had terminated, or a legacy pattern manifesting once more, leaving you sitting there thinking, wait, I thought I resolved this already. Why is this occurring again? Why right now of all instances when I felt like I was finally making headway? If that describes you, pay close attention to me. That does not indicate regression on your part. That does not indicate failure on your part. Those legacy elements resurfaced because they constituted the absolute final remnants. It resembles those traditional coffee presses, the kind where you depress the plunger all the way down to force all the grounds to the base. It resembles that entirely, with everything being propelled downward and outward, and what you were experiencing was the very final fraction, the dregs emerging one final time before it departed completely. It resurfaced because it was exiting, not because it was remaining. It required one final instance of being witnessed prior to its departure. And honestly, when I sat with that, it could evoke a degree of emotion, and I am not even going to deceive you, because there is something profoundly quiet and devastating in realizing that suffering merely desires to be observed one additional occasion prior to being permitted to depart. We treat suffering as though it were the adversary, correct? We react with sentiments like, disperse it away from me, I refuse to experience this, compel it to cease. Yet suffering is not actually attempting to harm you. Suffering is merely attempting to capture your focus. It serves as a signal. It functions as your organism's method of waving a banner and stating, listen, an event transpired here. Kindly examine this. Individuals who are physically incapable of experiencing suffering, specifically those rare individuals possessing that condition, ultimately injure themselves persistently without even recognizing it, because there exists no warning mechanism instructing them to halt. Consequently, suffering, regardless of how intensely we despise it, actually functions as a mechanism of protection. It constitutes a mechanism of affection, strangely enough indeed. And what I am perceiving on your behalf is that this legacy suffering, this entity you have been hauling, which never even belonged to you, was not attempting to penalize you throughout this period. It merely required a solitary instance of recognition prior to you permitting it to exit the threshold permanently. Therefore, here is what I perceive transpired on your behalf, and I want you to visualize this alongside me. I perceive that you seated yourself, perhaps not literally, perhaps this occurred within a vision or during a tranquil commute somewhere, or inside the shower, or at 3 a.m. when sleep evaded you, and you engaged in a dialogue with this legacy iteration of the suffering as though it were a diminutive, frightened iteration of an individual, resembling a child standing in your presence, and rather than shouting at it to evacuate, rather than shooing it away an additional time as you had executed 1,000 times previously, I perceive that you gazed upon it and you declared, "Thank you. Thank you for cautioning me when caution was required. Thank you for educating me regarding what anguish feels like, so I would recognize it when I encountered it subsequently. Thank you for assisting me in perceiving clearly even when clarity proved painful. Thank you for assisting me in identifying darkness within other individuals because you instructed me regarding its appearance initially. Thank you for preserving my safety in the sole manner you understood, and subsequently I visualize you embracing it, rather than battling it, embracing it indeed, embracing it, and ultimately letting it go, releasing it, indeed, that represents the ultimate farewell. That is what the heading addresses. You are not bidding farewell to an individual necessarily, or even a specific recollection. You are bidding farewell to a legacy identity. The iteration of you that presumed this suffering constituted permanent furniture within your existence. The iteration of you that presumed you were obligated to maintain the burden solely because someone else transferred it to you. And indeed, it is going to register as a loss. It is going to register as mourning because, despite being fractured, despite being heavy, despite being unjust, that entity constituted a component of your narrative for such an extended duration that relinquishing it feels equivalent to forfeiting a fragment of your identity. You surrender what you cherish, even when what you cherished was actually inflicting harm upon you throughout the entire duration. That is permissible. Indeed, you have permitted it. You are authorized to mourn an entity that proved detrimental to you. That does not render you fragile. It renders you human, simply human. Now, here is where the situation improves, all right? Because I prefer not to leave you lingering within the sorrowful aspect, even though the sorrowful aspect warranted articulation. What this cleansing has accomplished, and I cannot overemphasize this, is that it has cleared out space, genuine physical and energetic space internally, resembling a chamber that is finally being cleared out following years of clutter. And what is migrating into that space, presently, today, this week, is passion, creativity, the category of energy that compels you to actually execute something with your existence, rather than merely surviving it. This was never solely about releasing suffering for the objective of releasing suffering. This was about generating capacity. You were incapable of creating from a domain that was already saturated with someone else's sorrow. You required the clearance initially. And I am gathering that this entire procedure, encompassing the cleansing, the low temperatures, the legacy recollections resurfacing, the sorrow, was genuinely about restoring optimism. Envision it thus. Skepticism and disbelief were poured outward from your person, and currently you are being replenished progressively with something more stable, something that genuinely belongs to you on this occasion. Not borrowed faith, not someone else's residual optimism, but your own. The dark, oily substance draining outward from that receptacle I outlined earlier is being substituted presently with something lighter, something golden, radiant. I continually visualize this golden, warm energy streaming inward where the dark substance formerly resided, resembling sunlight flooding a chamber after you finally part the drapes that have remained closed for ages. That constitutes my perception. Therefore, let us address the apprehension factor, because this is monumental, and I genuinely want you to absorb this segment. Whatever apprehension you have been hauling, fear regarding pursuing what you genuinely desire, apprehension regarding voicing your perspective, meaning apprehension regarding being entirely unapologetic or authentic in the presence of individuals who might evaluate you critically, apprehension regarding even acknowledging what your wildest aspiration truly is. That apprehension has drained outward concurrently with the suffering. It functioned as the ultimate entity maintaining vigil honestly, because apprehension's entire purpose is to safeguard you from sustaining injury once more in the manner you were injured previously. Yet apprehension fails to distinguish between legacy danger and contemporary safety. It merely persists in maintaining vigil indefinitely unless an entity informs it that the threat has dissipated, and that precisely describes what is transpiring on your behalf presently. The threat has dissipated. The legacy circumstance that instructed you to experience fear, to remain diminutive, to conceal your genuine desires, that circumstance has concluded. You no longer inhabit it, yet your nervous system, indeed, your brilliant nervous system, may not have received the notification yet. And that is acceptable. That is normal. That represents the purpose of this entire procedure. Consequently, consider where this is going to manifest for you, practically because it is going to manifest. Perhaps you are an individual who authors items or generates items or conceives concepts, and you have been sitting on a post, a project, a piece of labor, an entity you felt terrified to introduce to the world because you presumed individuals might evaluate it critically or evaluate you critically. That apprehension is departing. You are going to commence introducing that entity outward. Perhaps you are an individual at an occupation where you have maintained silence, allowing your concepts to be bypassed, allowing alternative individuals to claim credit because articulating your perspective felt excessively hazardous. That apprehension is departing likewise. You are going to commence articulating your perspective. Perhaps it involves your family. Perhaps you harbor an entire routine of withholding how you genuinely feel, smoothing everything over, rendering yourself more diminutive at the dining table so no individual feels uncomfortable. That apprehension is departing. You are going to commence articulating the truth gently, indeed, yet clearly, and you are going to cease apologizing for it. I want you to observe, if you encounter recurrent numerical sequences throughout the upcoming days, such as glancing at a timepiece and observing 111, or encountering identical minor sequences manifesting repeatedly across random locations. I am not attempting to construct an extensive mystical phenomenon from it. I merely desire for you to observe it, because for numerous individuals it manifests precisely during the time frame when this category of release is unfolding, resembling a minor indicator, a minor, "Hello, you are upon the correct trajectory, persist." The identical principle applies to butterflies, indeed. If you begin observing them with greater frequency than usual, or merely experience this general sensation of buoyancy within your chest that was absent previously, your physical form comprehends prior to your intellect processing it. Trust the buoyancy when it manifests, and refrain from dissuading yourself from it. Presently, let us transition back to the physical dimension of this matter momentarily, because I genuinely believe your physical form has participated in this, extending beyond merely your emotions. Numerous individuals among you within this past month, specifically, have likely perceived anomalies physically. Perhaps your slumber has been irregular. Perhaps you experienced unusual fatigue or unusual emotionality, absent a distinct rationale, or you encountered random discomforts and tension lodging within your physical form where it does not typically reside. I am not articulating this to induce terror or to substitute consulting an actual medical practitioner. If an individual experiences severe physical distress, kindly always manage your physical health appropriately. However, energetically, what I am perceiving is that the lowest, most grounded component of you, the segment linked to security, survival, and your sense of belonging within the universe, constitutes the domain where the heaviest fraction of this release has transpired. That explains why it registered so physically. That explains why it registered as inhabiting your physical form, rather than solely residing within your intellect. Releases of this nature nearly universally originate at the root and ascend upward, because the root constitutes the repository for our most ancient material. The components originating from antiquity, the elements established prior to our acquisition of vocabulary concerning our experiences. And here resides a magnificent truth that I continually revisit. Do you understand the mechanism of pearl formation? A mollusk experiences irritation from an entity it did not select, an alien substance, an entity that does not belong internally. And rather than being annihilated by it, the mollusk envelops it, layer by successive layer, until that irritant transforms into something magnificent that precisely mirrors your experience, the suffering you are hauling, the material that never belonged to you, irritated you for years. It proved uncomfortable, failing to belong internally, yet rather than shattering you, you enveloped it, you processed it, converting it into wisdom, depth, and the category of comprehension that individuals devoid of adversity simply lack. And presently, subsequent to the cleansing, emerges the pearl. That represents the component of you about to be disclosed, not the injury, but the pearl that crystallized surrounding the injury. Consequently, I now want you to visualize the contents replenishing that vacant capacity, because vacancy in isolation does not constitute the objective, correct? Vacancy merely represents phase 1. What is replenishing you presently constitutes something genuinely belonging to you, genuine affection, genuine belonging, distinct from the iteration projected onto you by alternative individuals, distinct from conditional affection requiring specific behavioral compliance for receipt, distinct from affection accompanied by restrictive conditions, silent expectations, and attached guilt, instead representing something more stable, something exempt from demanding your contraction to maintain it. You were saturated for years with alternative individuals' projections, their apprehensions regarding your capabilities, their disillusionments, their unspoken expectations that you somehow assimilated and executed as though they represented your personal choices. The entirety of that has been emptied, and what is arriving presently constitutes an entity exclusively for you, demanding nothing from you, save for your receptivity. This constitutes your moment of receptivity. By the way, and I desire to emphasize that strongly, because numerous individuals among you are going to transition through all of this and immediately revert to caretaking mode, remediation mode, prioritizing everyone else's welfare. And the moment this recording concludes, I require you to resist that inclination briefly and permit yourself to genuinely experience receptivity. You are exempt from earning this. You are exempt from executing actions to merit the buoyancy arriving presently, as it already belongs to you. It was invariably destined to belong to you. You merely needed to clear out the extraneous material initially to generate capacity for it. Furthermore, I continually encounter this visualization of a dynamic reversing, like an ancient restrictive pattern reversing into its antithesis, with abundance manifesting concurrently, resembling the phenomenon that formerly entrapped you, restricted your potential, and rendered you stagnant within an inescapable cycle. That entity has relinquished its grasp. It has not vanished in the literal sense of never having existed, but it has vanished in the sense of forfeiting its historical dominion over you, and immediately following it, as though simply lingering for the threshold to unseal, arrives this sensation of overflow, of surplus emotionally and financially, naturally, and creatively, within whichever domain registered the most severe deficit. I perceive an impending transition wherein you commence encountering surplus rather than mere subsistence. I wish to address chronology, additionally, because I recognize certain individuals among you will observe this and ponder, all right, but precisely when does this transpire? When do I commence experiencing it? And honestly, you are already experiencing it. Certain individuals among you perceived it prior to activating this recording, which simply validates your physical form's prior notification. Your physical form possesses prior awareness. The most arduous segment, specifically the active cleansing and emptying, has concluded. You no longer inhabit that phase, even if it feels incomplete, even if you remain somewhat raw, somewhat tender, somewhat uncertain regarding your identity, devoid of that burden. That tenderness is normal. Consider the unfamiliarity associated with depositing a heavy burden borne across years. Your upper limbs continue registering the mass even after its removal, correct? Your physical form must readjust to locomotion, absent that weight. That accurately describes your current state. The weight has vanished, whereas your physical form simply requires time to catch up. Consequently, do not permit this communication to convince you that additional cleansing remains required. I desire to articulate this directly, because it would prove effortless for you to absorb all of this and conclude. All right. Therefore, presumably, I harbor additional dark material to discharge, which contradicts the intended message. The message conveys the antithesis. The time has arrived to terminate clearance and initiate receptivity. If you persist in excavating for supplementary suffering to process and legacy injuries to discharge, you will manufacture affliction that is no longer necessary simply because excavating for suffering has become habitual. The labor presently does not involve additional excavation. The labor presently involves allowing yourself to be replenished, allowing yourself to receive the passion, the creativity, the buoyancy, and the affection currently migrating toward you. And I continually reflect upon that individualized dialogue I outlined previously, specifically the farewell dialogue, because I anticipate numerous individuals among you will experience an equivalent encounter in physical reality across the upcoming days, provided you have not already. It might not manifest as a dramatic occurrence. It might simply manifest as a tranquil instant wherein you abruptly experience peace concerning an entity you retained for years. An individual, a recollection, an iteration of your identity, an abandoned aspiration, a terminated romantic connection, regardless of its nature for you. When that instant arrives, I desire for you to genuinely experience it, rather than rushing past it. Express gratitude toward it, even if it inflicted harm, especially if it inflicted harm honestly, because suffering that receives acknowledgement relinquishes its grip substantially quicker than suffering suppressed and disregarded. Subsequently, release it, genuinely release it, avoiding superficial declarations, and instead physically unseal your palms and discharge it, because here resides the fundamental truth underlying the heading of this entire presentation. The ultimate farewell does not signify forfeiting an entity, but rather finally depositing a burden that never belonged to you to bear initially. Their error, their suffering, someone else's material was transferred to you frequently when you were excessively youthful, excessively trusting, or excessively affectionate to recognize your capability to decline, and you bore it on their behalf because that constituted your familiar methodology. And presently, subsequent to everything, subsequent to sleepless intervals, legacy recollections resurfacing, random discomforts, and instances where you questioned whether you were retrogressing rather than advancing, you finally deposit it and release what you cherished because affection and suffering intertwine with greater frequency than acknowledged, particularly when the suffering originated from a deeply cherished source, characterized by complexity and entanglement. Mourning is authentic, valid, and you are authorized to experience sorrow regarding it concurrently with your sense of relief. Yet on the reverse side of that farewell resides your authentic identity, the iteration that persisted prior to the acquisition of that borrowed suffering transferred to you, the iteration possessing perspectives, concepts, and a creative spark that remained dormant beneath the mass throughout this duration, awaiting sufficient capacity to finally manifest. That iteration does not necessitate construction from foundational elements. You are exempt from reinventing yourself, as you merely need to recall your pre-burdened identity prior to assuming everyone else's material as your occupation. They exist. That iteration of your identity never truly vanished, merely remaining obscured beneath that dark, heavy substance temporarily, and presently, with that receptacle draining and illumination returning, that iteration is going to manifest with increasing frequency in daily existence, initially through minor adjustments like enhanced candor and dialogue, reduced apologies for occupying space, and increased willingness to initiate postponed projects, followed by substantial demonstrations because momentum accumulates once you cease allocating your energy towards suppressing an entity. Consequently, if this recording located you, accept it as your validation. You have navigated authentic adversity throughout these past couple of weeks, devoid of imagination or regression, representing merely the concluding phase of a long-awaited release. The cleansing has concluded. The surfacing suffering never belonged to you initially, constituting their error and their suffering, and you are exempt from sustaining it on their behalf. You articulated your ultimate farewell, even if executed quietly, unnoticed by observers or uncomprehended by yourself, until verbalized presently. And indeed, sorrow accompanies this due to relinquishing cherished elements, even those devoid of personal benefit, which remains permissible. Mourn if necessary, yet avoid misinterpreting sorrow as an indicator of systemic malfunction, as it merely signifies an ancient threshold, sealing permanently to permit a novel threshold to unseal externally. Transitioning from clearance to receptivity, allow passion, concepts, and desires to re-enter absent immediate rationalization against them, permitting self-advocacy during historical moments of silence, and claiming the spatial footprint previously avoided, having executed the most arduous phase by confronting, thanking, and releasing the suffering. You need only advance with diminished buoyancy compared to your historical baseline. That constitutes the complete communication. You remain unbroken, having always remained unbroken, merely saturated with alien material subsequently purged. Embrace this reality, trusting your earned buoyancy, which will inevitably register as earned. You have my absolute assurance. Pay attention, because this does not involve fluffy wings or celestial harps. We are not discussing magical benefactors or a heavenly support team swooping in to fix your mundane problems. Describing the descent of two protective angels is a metaphor for a literal, unseen barrier that has suddenly enclosed your aura in response to a shifting environment. An unseen negativity has been expanding just beyond your vision, growing more audacious and nearing your space with a distinct focus on you. The sole reason you are currently aware of this hostility is that your spiritual armor is actively engaged, successfully blocking out the interference meant to suppress your spirit. This safeguarding force did not appear randomly. It materialized to counter a covert, methodical danger aiming to dismantle your well-being. You can sense it, can you not? Even if you lack the exact words for it, the sensation is undeniable. It resembles an abrasive shift in your daily existence, rather than a forgotten nightmare. Some days begin devoid of motivation, replaced instead by a profound, sourceless anxiety. Your exhaustion exceeds normal levels. This fatigue isn't bodily, but rather rooted deeply in the core where your passions once resided. It seems as though a transparent barrier blocks your imaginative flow. You are unable to truly experience it, although you can observe it. You recognize it belongs to you, yet it remains just out of grasp. Dialogues carry a new weight, stripped of their former significance. Navigating life feels akin to trudging through thick syrup, causing you to wonder if the destination is even worth the struggle. This amounts to more than a temporary slump. It represents the gradual intrusion of a vibration aiming to erase your identity. The most destructive aspect of this negative force is how abruptly it strikes. Rather than arriving with a loud entrance, it slips in quietly, bringing an urge to mindlessly check your device repeatedly despite your exhausted vision. It manifests as unwarranted panic striking right before you engage in healthy behaviors, commence a passion project, or enter into a meaningful dialogue. It is the internal doubt insisting your gut feelings are merely nerves. Your spiritual compass is delusion, and your peaceful self-assurance is vanity. This force has been eroding your self-reliance, trying to make you believe you are inept, undeserving, and vulnerable. However, the instant you challenged this falsehood and pushed back against the negativity, you initiated the most critical spiritual occurrence possible: the arrival of your angelic guardians. To be clear, these are not literal glowing beings hovering in the air. Consider this malicious force as spiritual static meant to disrupt your life's true frequency. Its core operational goal is to sever the tie to your inner strength. Losing touch with your inner might renders you harmless to the system. You remain trapped in the endless societal cycle. You blindly ingest whatever you are instructed to take in. You exist in a perpetual state of worry and lack of focus. As soon as your awareness expands to recognize the illusion and your inherent power to shape your world, alarms sound because this oppressive framework depends entirely on your ignorance. This mechanism of control exists to suppress your potential. The primary objective of this creeping shadow is to make you forget your authentic identity. Consequently, as your memory of your true self returns, the oppressive vibrations will intensify to match it. Consider this analogy. The escalating shadow you perceive acts much like an immense, creeping weather system. You are experiencing the atmospheric shift before the storm. The tension is palpable in your physical body, the environment, and the oddly oppressive quiet. This explains the current bizarre state of your circumstances. Once dependable connections are suddenly fragile. Future preparations now seem meaningless. The environment itself seems poised in suspense. This oppressive force flourishes when you feel bewildered and secluded. Its goal is to convince you of your absolute solitude and impending madness. However, that is entirely false. In reality, countless individuals are enduring this identical heavy sensation, and that collective emotional burden fuels the shadow's strength. This negative aura operates as an energetic echo chamber, absorbing mass apprehension and insecurity to become increasingly massive, robust, and stifling. So you might wonder about the timing. You are likely questioning the reason for this present escalation. Why has it chosen this specific instance to amplify? The answer is that your internal radiance is increasing. You are the spreading flame. You represent the forward motion. This overwhelming strain is not an indicator of defeat. Rather, it stands as proof of your triumph. As the internal discouragement grows louder, your obligation to heed its underlying message increases. As your suffering becomes more bewildering, your conviction in its purpose must solidify. The reality of your persecution proves you harbor a treasure they wish to steal. Within you lies a capability, an unborn future, and a core destiny that they desperately require you to abandon. This conflict wages directly upon your awareness, with your capacity to materialize wonder as the ultimate reward. Consider the previously mentioned guardians. These entities represent your elevated consciousness and pure essence, acting from a hidden future timeline to deliver aid. They function as the armor for your emotions, the weapon of your intellect, and the stabilizing force of your soul. Their arrival coincided exactly with the moment the shadowy force targeted you. Their purpose is not to battle the shadows on your behalf, but to ensure you recall your own capacity for combat. Their method of operating from within your core makes them the perfect defenders. By fortifying your personal limits, they render your spiritual perimeter invincible to interference. They boost your inner knowing. This intuitive boost counters the exact signals the darkness attempts to block, allowing you to perceive reality and steer through the turmoil. They do not remove your obstacles. Instead, they empower you to confront your difficulties independently, which is the only authentic form of safety. View their presence as your spiritual defense mechanisms operating at peak capacity. That fleeting spark of optimism amidst your profound gloom was their doing. That single moment of lucidity amidst the mental haze was their contribution. The choice you made to reject sorrow and embrace happiness was inspired by them. That was the feeling of their supportive presence guiding you. It manifests as a rapid wave of security, a tranquil space amidst the chaos. The true trial, and their reason for appearing, involves your ability to acknowledge their intervention. Once you perceive their presence and the safety they bring, the shadowy force is stripped of its primary advantage. Being unexpected, you cease to be a helpless casualty of your environment. You become an empowered driver of your own rescue. Mastering this situation is less complicated than it appears. completely depending on your physical sensations. Your physical form serves as your primary barricade. It operates as a brilliant detection system that constantly provides factual data. The oppressive energy, confusion, and interference manifest as empty, burdened, and rigid sensations. It forces an instinct to pull away, become small, and assume a defensive posture. This sinister vibration is characterized by gastric tension, chest constriction, and constrained respiratory patterns. Conversely, the protective, divine force manifests as broad, comforting, and weightless. It resembles a profound, easing exhalation. It brings a sudden spinal shiver, spontaneous piloerection, and the sensation of being enveloped in absolute security. Consequently, it is imperative to prioritize your physiological reactions over your mental chatter. Your mind could assure you that all is well, yet your wondrous physical form signals an alarm. Therefore, you must heed your flesh. These guardians are steering you toward a particular mindfulness. This entails mindfulness regarding your personal vibration. It serves as your most precious resource, and it is exactly what the darkness aims to drain. This negativity prefers you chaotic, not idle. It requires you to operate in a state of panic. Its goal is to trick you into wasting your essential energy on trivial matters. It demands your anxiety over tomorrow, yesterday, and the opinions of peers. Therefore, your initial defensive maneuver is acknowledging that your emotional state is a conscious selection, and it is exactly this selection the darkness wishes to command. They wish to instill a sense of impotence, making you think you are victimized by a cruel universe. Yet your defensive barrier acts as a reflective surface. It bounces the directed negativity away, revealing the reality that you alone command your vibrational state. An escalating, choking tension exists, forming a worldwide psychological manipulation. We seem to be governed by a haze of deception, and the guardians are providing the clarity to pierce it. This haze serves as the deception. The deception dictates that you are isolated from others. The deception claims you are utterly alone. The deception asserts you lack strength. Furthermore, this negative vibration acts with such current hostility precisely because humanity rests but upon a critical threshold. We are experiencing a collective realization, an unstoppable blaze of awareness, so potent it compels the darkness to double its frantic efforts. They recognize their impending defeat. This is a known fact to them. Consequently, their strategy is to trap you in terror and bewilderment. Terror remains their sole remaining commodity. However, you are not obligated to accept it. You possess the ability to silence the media. You can cease your endless negative browsing. You can eliminate the useless interference. You hold the power to dictate the vibrations allowed near you, which is not ignorance but rather intense preservation. It is intensely, profoundly preserving. This is where the magic lies. As the negativity applies more force, it inadvertently compels you to manifest wonder. It functions as a catalyst for your spirit's growth. The flames of this negativity refine your internal brilliance. It demands your courage, forces you to confront neglected issues, and compels you to advocate for your existence. It acts as a spotlight illuminating your exact vulnerabilities. These guardians do not intend to eliminate your hardships. Their purpose is to accompany you amidst the trial. Their presence grants you the bravery to cease fleeing the shadows, confronting them directly to declare your fearlessness. terror remains their exclusive source of sustenance. By depriving them of this terror, you strip away their dominance. To truly comprehend the situation, recognize that your ultimate aspirations are currently under divine management. The grander scheme is governed by your spiritual pinnacle, functioning seamlessly with this shielding vibration. Your current responsibility avoids deciphering the entire journey. Instead, your task is to concentrate on your daily existence. This operates as your hidden advantage, given the stealthy nature of the negativity. It avoids challenging your massive dreams directly. Rather, it targets the start of your day. It infiltrates your breakfast routine and the mental chatter during your dental hygiene. It focuses on the ordinary activities because those provide the best cover for its presence. Therefore, you must observe the minor details with intense focus. Are you truly finding pleasure in this activity? Is this meal truly what you desire? Are your actions driven by duty, or do they stem from your genuine truth? These brief instances of honest introspection act as a shield. They link you to your foundational spiritual energy and genuine identity, which the negativity actively tries to hide. The guardians communicate subtly via these inquiries. Their message is to become conscious in the present reality. They urge you to prioritize yourself. You could be anticipating a specific event, an employment prospect, a person's arrival, or an emotional shift, while obsessively watching the time and growing increasingly frantic. This represents a major snare set by the negativity, the distortion of temporal reality. They intend to manufacture a sense of urgency and tardiness, whispering that a delay in your desires equates to total failure. That is a deception. It is necessary to broaden your perception of temporal flow. During periods of anticipation, the cosmos is not inflicting a penalty. It is providing a shield. Utilize this period as a personal offering. Cease your frantic anticipation of a call and dedicate that duration to a beloved activity that replenishes your spirit. Reverse the narrative. This acts as an act of defiance. By refusing to participate in frantic anticipation, you nullify an agreement with the negativity and establish a new pact with tranquility. We must address the complicated aspect of this progression. As your awareness expands, you become acutely aware of those who remain unconscious. You may face individuals harboring intense envy regarding your trajectory. While they might hide their overt feelings, they intuitively recognize your autonomy, tranquility, and strength, which frightens them by challenging their internal self-deceptions. They remain bound to a framework you are escaping, and their hostile response to your liberation serves to guard their internal suffering. However, this situation demands the application of your shielding vibration. It is absolutely essential. Rescuing them is not your responsibility. Your duty entails remaining faithful to your journey and acting as a silent paradigm of truth. The guardians shield you from this external envy, provided you consciously decline to participate in it. By rejecting the personal sting of their behavior, you allow them to experience their feelings independently. Your tranquility remains intact. An entity exists seeking your reliance, attempting to maintain your spiritual, energetic, and emotional poverty. They offer meager scraps of time, tempting you forward to pursue an illusionary destiny. This represents the alluring restraint. The radiance of the guardians provides the truth that your liberation requires nothing you do not already possess. The strength you search for externally resides permanently within. Their presence serves to reintroduce this reality to your awareness. Although this concept is not new, it represents an essential memory that the oppressive negativity easily obscures. This explains the reason for you receiving this communication. This clarifies why this message reached you. It is not solely intended for the ignorant individual. It targets the aware individual who requires reassurance that their inner knowing is not a symptom of madness. The requirement here involves maintaining your awareness. The assignment is basic but massive, unyielding opposition. When the impulse to withdraw arises, make contact. When the impulse to observe passively arises, take action. Connection is the goal. The negativity seeks your solitude, since an isolated individual is simpler to conquer. The guardianship of the dual angels serves as a pathway to fellowship. They link you with your spiritual community, the awakened individuals currently experiencing identical strain, so you can unite your power. Shared effort lightens the burden. Tranquil waters never forge a masterful mariner. We are collectively mastering the navigation of these chaotic spiritual currents, and our persistent endurance poses a monumental danger to the shadows. Therefore, your stubborn resilience constitutes an act of rebellion. This requires no haughtiness or theatrical displays. You are not required to command an audience or spearhead a colossal uprising. The most impactful transformations occur silently within the intimate holy confines of your personal existence. Foster the novel concept, the fresh connection, the innovative methods, and the emerging identity. Slowly dismantle the past barriers, destructive routines, pessimistic cognitive loops, and poisonous relationships. You are actively dismantling the foundational architecture of the negativity within your reality. This endeavor may progress lethargically. It will undoubtedly prove tedious at times. However, it constitutes the most vital undertaking of your existence. Trust my words, as I have navigated that exact path. Furthermore, undertaking this task alongside another awakened spirit amplifies the effectiveness exponentially. The final trial involves allure. The negativity possesses a strong, enticing quality. It provides indulgence, financial gain undeniably, and chances accompanied by alluring restraints. It pledges absolute fulfillment, yet the cost is your essence. It acts as a lingering phantom, alluring you with subtle promises to forsake your moral compass. The guardians are present to reveal the reality of the situation. The object of your supposed desire is merely a snare designed for your imprisonment. Your armor is not a fragile barricade. It functions as an unyielding barrier of judgment. This grants you the capacity to halt before consenting, before finalizing an agreement, and before surrendering your autonomy, allowing you to pose a fundamental, significant query. Does this action genuinely benefit my ultimate well-being? The response may defy your anticipations. It could necessitate declining a massive prospect. It could entail departing from a partnership. It could involve letting somebody down. However, by tuning into your guardians and your inner compass, you will discern the disparity between the false promise of an alluring restraint and the profound, authentic vibration of a true trajectory. The negativity demands rapid action, forcing choices driven by terror and urgency. Conversely, the guardian vibration embodies tranquility. It instructs you to decelerate. You exist in safety. Time is abundant. You possess ample moments for contemplation. Your fortitude exceeds your awareness. Furthermore, your receptivity is not a vulnerability. It serves as your ultimate strength. It functions as your sensory receiver. The exact second you experience a surge of negativity, characterized by profound annoyance or hopelessness, that serves as the prompt to engage your barrier. The Guardians did not arrive to rescue you from the earthly plane. They arrived to rescue you by granting the power to flourish within it. They assist in the construction of your personal autonomy through every individual choice. The ultimate component of this mystery is as follows. The negativity is unable to endure the proximity of authentic, unwavering affection. This does not refer to amorous or familial bonds, but rather the profound, self-generating adoration for your personal essence, which powers the radiance. Consequently, as you sense the shadows expanding, confront it with a deliberate focus on thankfulness. As you experience the strain, confront it with a deliberate choice to inhale deeply and purely. As you encounter the terror, confront it with a deliberate decision to recall your inherent strength. The dual guardians exist not as a myth, but as an active, vital truth, demonstrating the cosmos's dedication to your triumph. They serve as proof that the danger is authentic, but equally authentic is your defense. They stand as proof that your presence is acknowledged. You are recognized, and you are unconditionally cherished by an entity vastly more powerful than any darkness that might approach you. Consequently, the subsequent occasion you experience that freezing, encroaching sense of panic, the subsequent occasion you experience the impulse to withdraw, to surrender, to attack, or to devalue your worth, simply halt. Recall the reason for these emotions. You are enduring a mystical assault, yet you possess ample defenses. You are accompanied. Furthermore, the conflict is already decided in your favor. The defense is already in position. Your only task is to rely upon it. Experience it, and allow it to direct you safely to the iteration of yourself that the universe desperately longs to witness. You represent the radiance they dread, and the Guardians stand as your observers. You are prepared. You are shielded, and you are presently navigating your path, clear of the haze.